This is James Lupton, delighted to be joined again with Paul Zanon. Paul, how are you, mate?
I am good, mate. I'm good. Loving your latest entries into boxing news. You're smashing it. How are you?
Thank you, mate. Thank you. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Big news in the boxing world. Turkey LL Sheikhs come over to the UK, putting on a big Wembley Stadium event. 90,000 people will be there to watch it. And it's just great to see an all British card. We'll start with
Uh,
the bottom of the cards. Turkey's favourite fighter, Mark Chamberlain. He's coming in against Josh Padley. Josh, a little bit of an unknown, 14-0. Probably most recognisable for being the first person to beat Jimmy First for the Central Area title. Um, but I mean, realistically, a walkover really for Chamberlain should be a walk in the park.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love the way that literally sort of put a pin in the middle of the yellow pages and put a name out, and it was Mark Chamberlain, and Sheikh Turkey's just decided that this is his man, and I think if Mark Chamberlain still pinches himself, he wins one in Saudi and thinking bloody hell, that could be it, and then knocks the geezer out in the next one as well. So he's obviously seen something in Mark, but more than anything, I can imagine he's getting a few quid out of it, which is good. But more than anything, by having someone of that sort of financial status and that much enthusiasm who backs you, it kind of doubles your internal expectations to make sure you excel. You want to make sure that every time you go out there, you're giving it your best if it's your last fight. And as a result, I think we're seeing the very best of Chamberlain at the moment. I can imagine he pinched himself before, during, and after the actual fight as well. So yeah, I totally agree with your assessment there. I mean, Padley, he's a bit feather fisted, and Chamberlain's not. So I think this is Sheikh Turkey trying to build Mark's record up a bit more until he can maybe get into a soft title of some sort, or some strap, which some interim world title or something that come up there. But yeah, I just love the fact that he's taken him under his wing and sort of said, you're my guy.
Is it frustrating in a way to see Mark Chamberlain go down this route and potentially have a bit of a padded record towards these titles and world rankings when Frank was building up the Mark Chamberlain versus Sam Noakes fight, which was an absolute cracker domestically?
I think Mark Chamberlain's bank balance would probably go against what you've said, and I'm sure if we were in Mark's boots, we'd probably say the same thing. I mean, it's one of those things, thinking about Saudi Arabia and thinking about traditional routes to world championships. I remember chatting with Callum as well on his on a number of occasions, saying, there's very few people these days that go through the southern area, British, English, British, Commonwealth, the proper EBU title, and then go for a bona fide and world title. And I'll be honest with the dilution of so many different straps around at the moment, it's become a bit sort of joke worthy. So to now actually just have fights of good pedigree versus good pedigree, or good matchmaking in general, is far healthier to look at. I mean, I've been watching the telly recently, like the Friday night fights on Channel 5, and the stuff's been coming out of Saudi as well. It's been brilliant. And I'll certainly eat my hat when I say that a couple of years ago, saying it would never take off in Saudi because Madison Square Gardens, MGM, Las Vegas, and then Saudi Arabia. Well, you know what? It's happened, and everything else seems to be in the shadows now. It's smaller capacities. This guy, I don't know if Riyadh season is going to become an actual trademark. It may very well become a trademark, but calling it Riyadh season Wembley edition, yeah, that's a bit of a shit title, to be honest. I think they could do something a bit better than that. So, but listen, in the meantime, he's making these fights happen, and if Mike Chamberlain's making a few and he's got to go an unconventional route to get to the top, it's not the way I'd have liked to have seen it a few years ago. But nowadays, I think that we're going to get the best fights en route to the world titles, and Turkey's putting a lot of undefeated fighters against a load of other undefeated fighters. So Chamberlain Padley, yeah, I see Chamberlain running him over, but Padley's 14-0, so he's breaking those unbeaten records, and that's always interesting to look at.
I mean, Padley is, let's say they're 14-0, he's unbeaten, and this is the biggest fight of his career so far. So he's going to be hungry, he's going to want to impress, he's going to come to win. He's not going to roll over because he knows if he wins this, he's then all of a sudden on the bankroll with Turkey Al Sheikh and could be looking at another fight on the Riyadh season series. So how good is it on the flip side to saying, it should be a walkover on paper, but then to have actually on the flip side that this guy's going to come and he's going to give it his all and he's going to come to win.
I think anybody who's fighting in front of Sheikh Turkey is going to give it their 1,010%. I mean, it's equivalent in the old days of I guess Canelo calling out a fighter and knowing you were guaranteed you're going to get a big amount of money. I mean, I remember when Rocky Fielding, there's so many fighters out there that are going to normally go, oh, if only if only I was born 2 years earlier, if only I had started my career 2 years later, because there's a lot of fighters out there at the moment who are not as good as a lot of the past fighters who retired in, say, the last 5 years, who could have made huge cash. And if you look at Rocky Fielding, when he fought for the world title, I remember him saying at the time, he said, I would have said, they'd have called me up and said, it's 50 euros and your flight with Ryanair, I'd have gone over just to have the opportunity to fight for the world title. When he did get it, he had a bargaining chip, and then he got the $1 million fight at Madison Square Garden with Canelo. It doesn't matter win, lose, or draw. That was life-changing money for him and his family. If he'd have been out in, for example, and had a few tune-up fights for $1 million a pop, then his life-changing money might have been a lot bigger. Look at a fighter like Martin Murray. I mean, he's been in some absolute barn burners with the likes of Sergio Martinez. If Turkey had seen him fight back in the day, he would have been his favourite. Or let's say Billy Joe Saunders, who's now, God knows how much he weighs now, many Big Macs he's doing. But look at a talent like that. I'm sure that Turkey would have looked at him, and in the same way that he's in love with Tyson Fury, I bet you he'd have taken Billy Joe Saunders and said, mate, name me a figure and it's yours. So for the next group of guys, saying, for example, like Padley, they're all thinking, I could be that next special person. And if I can, then I'm guaranteed that one big fight could be the next fight, be the one I'm going to retire with.
Absolutely. Let's move on to the next fight, and there's a bit of bad blood and needle between these two, Joshua Buatsi and Willie Hutchinson. There was Buatsi grabbed Hutchinson around the throat, and people had asked him, why did you do that? And long story short, Willie Hutchinson had called him a fool one too many times. Buatsi didn't take too kindly to it and laid his hands on Willie Hutchinson, and it all sort of got a bit explosive between the two. So there's definitely needle already. This is going to just help the build up and fight week in the fight itself, surely.
I think it's all synthetic needle, to be honest. There's one of the, I think the very first little shove they had, Willie Hutchinson, if I listened closely to the video, it sounded like he said something like, let's give him a bit of a show here, or let's give him a better show than the previous guys. In other words, the previous face-to-faces were a little bit flat. And listen, Buatsi's not the sort of guy to sort of cause so much trouble. I don't know. I really genuinely don't know whether or not Willie Hutchinson has got it in him to be the really bad guy. I think he's trying to play a bit of a pantomime villain at the moment, So, but he needs to be careful because he's going in with a guy here who is genuinely world class. Someone the other day said we've got two world class fighters here. Willie Hutchinson suddenly world class. What the fuck, Don't get me wrong. I've seen Willie when he first started fighting. I saw about, I think, his first 5 or 6 fights on the bounce. But I did actually tip Craig Richard Spider to beat him in the last fight. So to have won it and won it wide, he done well, and that could also be maybe a significant milestone for Craig to say it's time to hang the gloves up, because he's been in quite a few tough fights, and he's certainly been in with much better opposition, and gave Buatsi a very good fight as well. Beating him with Beev, went the distance with him. But Willie Hutchinson going in against Buatsi's kind of got his mojo back a little bit at the moment. So when he fought against Dan Aziz, that was a good fight, and he controlled that nicely. He could have knocked him out in the last round, but out of pure respect for Dan, he didn't. So I think Willie needs to be aware that yes, he's trying to get a little bit of theatre going there, and again, hopefully, maybe thinking I can be the next Mark Chamberlain. I can provide entertainment. He just needs to be prepared that the entertainment he provides is not on the canvas. And his loss against Lennox Clark wasn't exactly the most spectacular, and he's fought nobody's kind of since then. So if I were him, I'd be playing it down a little bit and give it, like you said before about Padley, give it his absolute all in the ring to hopefully get the attention of certainly Sheikh Turkey. I think Turkey's one of those guys that even if you lose a fight, if you provide the entertainment, he'll want you back, because he's all about getting bums on seats and viewings and downloads and whatever, really. He's trying to get Saudi on the map. So anyone who can provide entertainment, that's good. So maybe he's thinking, being a bit of a dick in the build up is sort of helping him. And then Buatsi's kind of responding and Kai Graham around the photo and that, but it's all handbags. Honestly, it's totally synthetic build up. This ain't like Mike Tyson versus Mitch Green. These two will probably go out and have a curry afterwards, you know.
With Boetsi, for me personally, I'm disappointed at his career so far. I feel like he should be higher than where he is already at this point. Um, I feel like the level of opponents should have been a lot better already. I don't think he should have been in with your Dan Aziz, your Craig Richards, or now your Willie Hutchinson at this stage. He should have had these fights years ago and be in with your big boys now, if not with a world title around his waist already, if he's that good as everyone thinks he is. Do you think he'll be frustrated by how his career's gone so far?
Yeah, I mean, he's a quiet guy, and I had the pleasure of interviewing him just before, actually during lockdown for Ring Magazine, and really calm, incredibly polite guy. Sort of guy that if you didn't know he was a boxer, and he's saying, sorry, I've got to cut this one short because I'm off to work. You'd think he'd be going up the Canary Wharf or something because he's got that sort of demeanour about him. He's obviously a very clever guy as well, done his degree and all that. But I've always said that, and this is probably the last 5 years, that there should have been a Super Six tournament in the same way it was done with Mikhail Kessler, Andre Ward, etc. those years back, of light heavies in the UK. The likes of Boatsi, Callum Smith, Anthony Yard. Now you can throw Willie Hutchinson in there, Lyndon Arthur, Dan Aziz, Richards, Shakan Pitters. We've got so many good light heavyweights in there. But I tipped Boatsi years ago that he would be getting a world title probably around 2021. Well, when I spoke to Better Beev and I was talking about the different fighters, I went Anthony Yard, and he was pretty much like, who? And I was like, Boatsi. He went, I don't know. He said no. I think Boatsi has either got a shit team around him to have not created a world title chance. Apparently, he was supposed to be fighting Better Beev a while back, and then it was Bivol. Why those two fights haven't happened, I don't know. If he's fighting now just to keep active, well, he's going to be getting a much shitter salary by fighting the likes of Willie Hutchinson than he would be fighting against Better Beev or Bivol. I imagine that Boatsi is an incredibly talented man financially, very, very, very astute businessman, which makes me wonder why he's taking these lower level fights, unless he's getting paid a huge amount. But I can't imagine that a Dan Aziz fight and a Willie Hutchinson fight would pay anywhere near one fight against Bivol or Better Beev. Maybe he's worried. Maybe he's fearful. God knows.
Do you think the Hutchinson fight is a better fight than Anthony Yard versus Joshua Buatsi?
No. I was really disappointed that the Yard Buatsi fight didn't come to fruition. Apparently, it all came down to money in the end, and I think that was more Anthony Yard's side of things. I think that would have been a great fight. Yard is somewhat unpredictable. His engine is sometimes a little bit questionable, but he hits damn hard and he works off some beautiful angles. He's not a one punch knockout expert, which a lot of people think he is. He lays lovely little traps and he breaks people down. When he does finish them, it's with banging punches. But I think he can be a beautiful boxer when he wants to be. And Boatsi's an incredible in there, and he can hit as well. Very underrated punch power. So very, very disappointing. It never happened. Willie Hutchinson, yeah, I'll be like, oh, Willie Hutchinson. Well, we'll get a few quid for it, but I think that Boatsi will stop him.
Boatsi, this has got the interim title on the line. Apparently, I think it's a WBO, if I'm not wrong. Now we mentioned Bivol and Beterbiev. From what I'm hearing, Turki Al Sheikh wants the winner of that fight to face Jay Opetaya. So that means Boatsi's still waiting for a world title shot. He's then going to have to take another fight potentially in the meantime, whether it be against the loser of Beterbiev Bivol or somebody else, I don't know. Do you think he's in danger of missing his chance at the glory?
Yeah, so and again, it comes down to the money that Turkey can bring to the table. So the Boatsi Yard fight didn't happen because of money. Turkey wasn't the one involved in that. That would have been a Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren gig, and that's it. Turkey goes along, calls them both up, goes, how much you want, Anthony? And they'll be like, well, I want X number of million. He goes, lovely, cool. we'll get it sorted. How much do you want, Mr. Boazzi? And he'd be like, I want this amount. He'd be like, lovely. Now meet in the fucking ring on this date. And they're both like, yes, sir. You know what I mean? So, and he's doing that. And that brings out the best in everyone because they know that they're getting paid well. They know that they might get a chance for an even bigger paycheck down the line. But more than anything, the fans are really benefiting from this. And I know that a Boazzi yard fight could be an absolute bomb, and I really do. I love both guys, actually. I've had a chance to interview them both over the years, and they're really good boxing men. And I just think that 2 years down the line now, their miles on the clock could get them to a point where they're going to get taken out by an up-and-coming youngster, and that would be a real shame. Have it sooner, as in like by the end of this year, before they start to rust a little bit, you know?
Absolutely. Let's move on to the next fight. After his, in my opinion, upset of the year, Anthony Kakachi picked up the IBF world title, beating Joe Cordina. Unbelievable win for Kakachi, and he's one of those sort of real life Rocky stories. Come through underdog, done it the hard way. Famously, Cole Frampton's always said he's the hardest puncher he's been in with, and he's always sung his praises and said this guy is world level, and he proved it against Joe Cordina. He's facing off against Josh Warrington. Josh getting another chance at a world title. A good, solid domestic fight. This, isn't it? And I say domestic,
It is.
two British guys, not obviously domestic level. It's world level fight between these two.
So it's interesting because you've got Kakachi 35, you've got Warrington who's 33, but Warrington by far is the older man going into it, just miles on the clock. Warrington has had so many 12-round fights, and I just think he starts to slow down over time now. He's taken a lot of punches in there. The only fight that Kakachi ever lost, I remember, was 2017 against Martin J. Ward, and it was a very, very close fight, and I was ringside for that one. And I remember thinking, if this guy gets bigger opportunities, he could go somewhere. When he beat Joe Cordina, I could see something was. I could see he was rattling Cordina around round two. I think it was a case of Cordina was starting to unload him, and it wasn't doing anything to him, and he was like countering back. And all of a sudden, it was a case of, I think we've made a little dent here. Now, my worry is that if you take a look at Josh Warrington at the moment, he has literally only won one fight since 2019, since October 2019. And that's been against a very old Kiko Martinez when he regained the IBF world title, to then lose it against Lopez and then get knocked out by Lee Wood in a fight which, in all fairness, he was winning quite handily, and then he gets knocked out. So, one big punch and that's it. So now for me, I think that the person who's going to have the performance of their life in this is Josh Warrington against the older man, Kakachi. Could it happen? Yeah, I think it could. As much as I've just made out like Warrington is just on the shit heap, never underestimate a man who trains 12 rounds for every single fight and on many occasions has had to go through with it. You have to have incredible mental fortitude to do that. And the man does. And what I like about this one is the fact that they're both really decent guys. And you see them shaking hands, looking at each other, sort of two throwback fighters, but also two fighters that when the bell goes, they turn into Rocky Marciano in there. It's, whatever's needs to do to fight, they will do it. So I think this has got a great fight written all over it. If Josh can turn back the clock a little bit and pull out something sort of pre-2019, I'm not focusing too much on when he beat Kiko Martinez. If he can do what he did for the first part of the Lee Wood fight and keep his hands up, because he's got a dirty habit of doing that, which is where he's had his losses from, like Lara catching him when he's swinging, and then the next little sneaky step back and a big, sort of looping counter. So we will see. But listen, hats off to Anthony Kakachi, beat a good Cordina. And I guess, as you said before, another great domestic dust-up.
I think for me, the most interesting thing about this fight and what potentially makes it a bit of a firefight, or it could make it a stinker, it could go both ways, but it's that this fight is a make or break for both of them. I think this is the loser probably retires and will not win a world title again.
I think Kakachi might go on a bit longer. I think Warrington might say that's it, I've had enough, because that would then mean he'd only won one fight since 2019. And, he's been a two-time world champion. I think he's done well out of boxing. I also think he make a good commentator. He's got a lovely way about him. Whether he becomes a trainer or not, I'm not really sure. But yeah, I would say of the two of them, if either of the two are going to lose, I'd take Kakachi. Would go on for another couple of fights. Warrington would probably hang the gloves up. But you never know if it turns into a barn burner of a fight, and Sheikh Turkey wants to run it back again, or decides he wants to put them in the ring with an up and coming fight to test their mettle. Then, hey, again, it's everything with Turkey's name associated to it as one common thing, Dosh. And anyone who's going into that ring, yes, they want to fight, but yes, they want to fight for a shitload of money, and that's totally understandable. So if they've got that platform to do it, then good on them.
Next fight on the card, one of the great stories in boxing at the moment is Tyler Denny, and he's facing off against Hamza Shiraz. Now, let's start with Tyler Denny and his journey. Um, I mean, it's hard, it's easy to forget that. I mean, I thought today, before I'd done my research for this, I looked at Tyler Denny's record. Before I looked at it, I thought, how he's come to this point now when he was a journeyman. Well, actually, he wasn't a journeyman. And when I've looked through it, you think, well, actually, well, no, he lost his last fight against Linus Udofia. He was in the away corner at York Hall. But then since then, he's beaten so many good fighters, but he was never really a journeyman. He's only lost one or two fights, a couple of draws. Yeah, two losses, three draws on his record, and he's now got the 19 wins. And the run he's on, like I say, since his last loss against Linus Udofia, which was in 2019, he beat Derek Azazi, who won the Ultimate Boxer tournament. He drew and then beat River Wilson Bent, who was unbeaten at the time. Then he beat an unbeaten Bradley Ray, an unbeaten Brad Pauls, and Macaulay McGowan, who's tough in game as they come. Signani, and then Felix Cash most recently, another unbeaten fighter. It's got to be one of the greatest runs in British boxing today.
Yeah, but I'm not going to be. I'll be honest. I think Tyler Denny. It's not that he's got a padded record there or anything, but I'll put it this way: Matteo Signani is 637 years old. Honestly, he's almost as old as Luis Ortiz. He he was actually doing quite well in the fight, and when the corner threw in the towel because of the cut, I think he was kind of like, oh well, that's it. He's been around for so many years. The fight that impressed me the most about Tyler Denny was actually the Felix Cash fight. Felix Cash, tough guy, very, very, very tough. And I remember when he beat Denzel, that was quite a shock to a lot of people. They're thinking, fucking hell, he can really bang Felix Cash here. And yeah, the fight was halted on a cut, but I think he was starting to get to him. He was just managing technically to break him down. And that's where Tyler Denny really impressed me. I must admit, all the other fights up to that point, I was kind of like, yeah. When he fought against Matteo Signani, I was kind of like, yeah, I'm really just not thinking this guy's going to go anywhere. Felix Cash fight to me did tell me that he's got something. However, and this is the big however, I saw Hamza Shiraz have his debut, and he was about 18 years old, and he was only about 6 foot tall. He's now looks like he's around 6'4", and he's filling out, and he is really, really heavy-handed. And I said it from the very beginning: this kid is heavy-handed. He's going to get stronger and stronger, and he is. And I think he should be awarded a world title because I would be very, very, very surprised if he loses this fight against Tyler Denny. I genuinely believe he'll stop him in under 5 rounds. I think it will absolutely leather him. And I'm not. That's no sort of having a go at Tyler Denny. It's just because I think Hamza Shiraz is that good a boxer and that good a fighter. So my thing is moving on to Shiraz there is that if he can get a world title in the next 12 months, that would be amazing. That would be really, really good. I'd like to see him with some of the guys stateside and see what sort of a dent he can make out there. Because if he can do that, then brilliant. Or Sheikh Turkey brings over some of the Yanks to Saudi and lets Hamza beat up on them over there. So, but I think Shiraz will win it. I think he's going to just be far too strong, far too intimidating. He's got what seems like infinite number of gears to work through in terms of power, stamina, etc. So for me, I think this is probably going to be the most uneven fight of the entire batch.
I mean, do you think there's any risk in taking this fight because Hamza Shiraz is the mandatory for the WBC title? And I spoke to his trainer, Ricky Funes, and he was driving to watch the champion, Carlos Adames, on a little bit of a scouting mission, essentially. He told me that was the plan. Was Adames was next. Obviously, it's now a Tyler Denny. Obviously, he'll pick up the European title. But when you're already the mandatory for the world title, you're number one there. Is there a danger in taking another fight before that world title, or is it better to have that activity?
There's always a danger when you step into the ring. You can get careless for a second, someone can shout your name out, and for a split second, you can look away, and next thing, bang, you get hit. Um, I think that he's probably thinking, I'm going to get a good little salary here. It's going to be the biggest event I'd have been at in terms of Wembley Stadium. From Tyler Dennys' perspective, when he fought against Matteo Signano, he was fighting at the Civic Hall in Wolverhampton. I don't want to be funny, but it's hardly Wembley Stadium, so this is his biggest fight as well. I think that he's doing this to, how can I put it? If he wanted to spar, he'd stay at the gym, but he wants to actually get something purposeful under his training camp. And I genuinely think that although he's going for the European title here, he's already got his eyes firmly set on the world title within 12 months.
Next fight, co-main event for me, the fight of the night. Liam Beefy Smith against Josh Pretty Boy Kelly. Um, what a great fight.
Yeah, so I at the beginning I was thinking to myself, well, Josh Kelly's mainly a sort of 154 fighter, and Liam Smith even really struggled to shrink down for Chris Eubank Jr. for the rematch. So I was thinking, what are they doing here? Catch weight of about 14 stone or something. So, but when I was looking at them both doing the face-off yesterday, Liam Smith looked, I don't know if he was holding his stomach in a little bit, but I don't think he's anywhere near 160 at the moment. And Josh Kelly kind of gives you the impression that he's maybe about, I don't know, 8-9 pounds over, like 8 or 9 good pounds over. It's ones that he can lose comfortably. But this is Liam Smith. We have to remember who he's been in with. The caliber of opponents he's been in with are far higher than anything that Josh Kelly's been in with. I mean, David Avanesian there, very, very good fighter. And that's what happens when Josh Kelly went in there and starts doing all the flash that he was doing in his earlier fights, trying to give it all to Prince Nassim. He forgot one little thing. He's not Prince Nassim. He's phenomenally talented. Number one, he can't bang like him. He certainly doesn't have that power, and he doesn't have the chin that Naz had as well. So, but it could be a case of Josh Kelly's timing here is absolutely perfect in terms of taking on Liam Smith. And if he does take on a version of Liam Smith, which is a bit substandard, he may well put on a performance of his life and pick him apart. I'm not sure about stop him, but I think he's got a very good chance of pulling him apart and winning it by wide points. If Liam Smith, for whatever reason, comes back rejuvenated, you've got to remember that when he beat Chris Eubank Jr., it was January of last year, and that was a huge, huge shock. It was at a time, at a conversation I'm almost having now, which is he too old? Is he over the hill? Is he going to come in looking flabby and all that? It's exactly the same questions I was discussing at that time then at the end of 2022. And then bang, he stops Eubank Jr. in the 4th round. So I agree. I think this is going to be an absolute crack of a fight. And Liam Smith doesn't, sort of just plod around the ring, doing the whole thing of working his opponent out. From the minute the first bell goes in the first round, he's at his man. And that's it. And Josh Kelly's one for really getting under the fighter's skin when he's in the ring. He's not a huge one for trash talking, Josh Kelly, but he's got a very innate way of irritating people when he's in there. The little hands down movements and the little flurries and all the rest of it, and then sort of sticking his chin out. And with someone like Liam, that can be a bad thing to play around with. So yeah, really looking forward to it. I'll be interested to see what version of Liam Smith comes in. If it's a top version of Liam Smith, he wins it. If it's anything but 100%, then I believe that Josh Kelly will win wide on points.
With the weight, I think they've said it's at 160. So who does that benefit more? Josh Kelly coming up or Liam Smith having to try and squeeze back down again to 160?
I think Josh Kelly's going to enjoy that. Like I said, he spent a lot of time 154 naturally, and so he won't have to kill himself to get down to the 160. Liam Smith last time, he looked a little bit flabby on the rematch with Chris Eubank Jr. I don't know what happened in his training camp. Just depends what shape he's in at the moment. We're looking at 3 months out at the moment, and he's got the opportunity to really trim down any fat, get into a serious training camp, do as much cardio as he can to sort of, reduce fat content. Liam Smith's fighting brain is fantastic. He's a very, very clever fighter. and he can be quite evil in there when he wants to as well. You know, he does pack a punch, and if he hurts you, he does not let go. So I would say the weight benefits more Kelly, but it will all depend on how well Liam's strength and conditioning and maybe his nutritionist are working alongside him.
Let's move on to the main event. Danieldubois, will start with him as the interim champion. Big opportunity for him. Who would have thought when he lost to Joyce that it would be Dubois at Wembley Stadium against AnthonyJoshua for the big money, and Joyce at the O2 against Derek Chisora?
I feel so sorry for Joyce. He beats up Danny Boy, and you know, hands him his first loss, smashes his orbital bone, shows he's extremely heavy-handed. Smashes up Joseph Park, you know, sort of further down the line. Just hasn't been gifted the opportunity of a world title shot. I've said it for ages that if he'd have fought Joshua in the last 5 years, he would have beaten him, probably stopped him, because Joshua would have sort of come for him and he would have clipped him with a counter, probably the same way he did with Joseph Parker. Which, for the record, Joseph Parker's been on absolute fire recently in his last few fights, beating the man that beat them. We're just talking about. So, but Danieldubois gets beaten by Joyce. What happens? Goes to America, fights on this Don King card, which I'm not even sure if he's ever got paid for. Wins a WBA regular title. Officially can say he's a world champion at that point. And then he's, you know, I wouldn't say he's had a run ever since the Joyce loss, but he's fought a few names: Kevin Raintright, Trevor Bryan. But one thing that they've both got in common, Anthony Joshua and Daniel, is that their last loss on their record is both Usyk. Now, Danny, he loses in 9 rounds, and Joshua went 12. The last one, a debatable split decision. I thought Usyk won it quite comfortably again. But the point being that it'd be interesting to see how they both fight in terms of the experience since the Usyk losses they both incurred. Because Danieldubois fought against Jarrell Miller, which for me was neither here nor there. It was just a really fat dude he was trying to get a paycheck, and he disposed of him after no one had ever been able to. Whereas Joshua beat Jermaine Franklin Jr., which was a horrible fight to look at, and he looked really sort of gun shy in that one. He beat Helenius and Otto Wallin, which in my opinion were two guys over the hill, and there was nothing really too big in that. Francis Ngannou, I've said this before, I said that he'd smash him in under 3 rounds. What made that fight more impressive than anything was the fact that Tyson Fury wasn't able to get any traction against him, gets knocked down against him, and then, you know, AJ goes in with his straight right. It was a lead right, in fact. It wasn't even like, I don't think there was a jab before it, and cracks him, and it's good night. So now everyone's basically saying we've got 2 huge hitters here, because in all honesty, I thought that Danieldubois was going to lose against Filip Hrgović. I thought that his amateur pedigree, the fact that he was unbeaten, he's a big lad, he can hit, he's got good movement to him. But he basically just went in there and he beat up on him and cut his eyes. Now, I've heard people saying, "Oh, Dubois can't take a shot to the chin." Hold on a minute. And what? Anthony Joshua can? No. Whoever gets hit in this fight, it's that neither one of them have great chins. That's you know, a given. They both have huge punch power. Both have huge right hands. You probably have to edge Joshua in terms of the right hand there, but not far behind in terms of what Dubois can bring to the table. But I just think that Dubois looked the fresher in his recent fights, and mentally, after he lost against Usyk, it was like he just missed that. He wasn't talking about it anymore. People brought it up. He was quite candid about it. Yeah, I lost, but I've learned a lot from it. He's a lot younger. He's got a lot less miles on the clock. He hasn't been in such grueling fights, and that's maybe where Joshua's got an advantage, is that mentally he's been in the bigger stage fights. The last time he was at Wembley Stadium was when he had the epic one against Vladimir Klitschko. So maybe he's thinking, I'm going to regain that energy when I go back to Wembley. Who knows? But in the same breath, Danieldubois is going in there with an upgrade for the IBF title, because it's now been gifted by Usyk, and which also, that little move from Usyk, very clever, stops him being the undisputed world champion, but it also means that Tyson Fury, if he was to beat Usyk on a rematch, would also not be undisputed champion. So, but by fracturing that way, it's hot things up a little bit. That's all. So, and Usyk also probably saved himself a few quid. Not that he needs to at the moment; he's got so much money in the bank. But he saved himself a few quid on sanctioning fees with the IBF. So there we go. I genuinely believe there's something like a 2% chance this fight will go the distance. I think it's going to be bombs away, but I don't think straight away. My last famous words, it could be a one round knockout. But I think for the first round or two, they're going to be just generally sort of throwing a jab out. I think Dubois will be maybe slightly more aggressive in those 2 rounds in terms of trying to hunt Joshua down. And then I think Joshua will start to relax a bit more from round 3 onwards. And then they'll both be basically laying out the cannons from both sides. And it'll be, like I said, at that point, it'll be a case of who lands first.
Do you think, so for me, there's 2 sides of this. So one, there's been questions over Anthony Joshua's chin, with the Ruiz loss, and he's shown vulnerability there, but he's shown a lot of improvement in his skill and ability under Ben Davison. With Dubois, he's probably got a better chin than AJ, but he's shown he's got quit in him. He's shown that he's not worried to, back out of a fight essentially and take the easy way out almost, I suppose. Who do you think mentally and psychologically goes into this fight stronger?
At the moment, I still think Dubois. The reason I say that is that Joshua had to do 2 back-to-back losses in terms of Usyk. When Dubois lost against Joyce, in all honesty, in all fairness, he had a cracked orbital bone. So it was actually a wise move to sort of pull out the fight and go another day. I remember at the time, I think it was Carl Frampton was commentating on the fight for whoever it was, 5 Live or whoever, and said, "Oh, you're fighting for the world title, or you're fighting for whatever. You don't, you fight until the last bell and all that." And it was kind of like, well, no, you get the chance to fight another day, and that's it. So yeah, it was disappointing for him. It's his first loss, but I think whoever gave me advice to put him out, that was Martin Bowers, made the best decision to do that. Both fighters have gone through a number of trainers recently, and I can't really say whether that's a good or a bad thing. I know that Dubois has had Don Charles in there, and Don Charles was very candid about it at the press conference yesterday, saying, "Listen, I've only been there for 12 months. That's his last 3 fights, and yes, we've had success. In other words, after Usyk, but Don Charles was, for me, almost made it sound like, well, if we lose against Joshua, I could be well out again as well, So, and Anthony Joshua should have never got rid of Rob McCracken. Should have stayed with him for life. Should have stayed with him for life. He's probably one of the few people on this entire planet that a man who doesn't even need to be in Anthony's camp to know exactly mentally how he's feeling or what needs to be said to him to pull him up. Ben Davison, I don't mean to be funny, but he's come in and basically picked up the finished article with Anthony Joshua. And what's he going to give him a little bit of we, and sort of say, yeah, well, go AJ. One of AJ's biggest downfalls is the fact that his entourage is gigantic. And I think I remember Vladimir Klitschko saying after he had his little outburst after the Usyk fight, and he said, in my change room, he says, it's my brother, a couple of other people. He says, and that's it. He says, Anthony has about 40 people around him. And he said, when he had the meltdown in the ring, if his friends, his true friends, or his true managers, or the people who care about him, really cared about him, they would have gone over in front of him, taken a microphone, and I said, Anthony, that's enough. We're leaving the ring, you're going home. And you'll thank me later. And if you want to hit me, you can do it. But listen, I'm willing to take it. And that's the problem with Anthony. He has so many people around him. And it's one of the annoying things, I must admit, at the moment, with the number of people that are involved in any boxing camp or any boxing person, is number of managers, number of agents, number of promoters. So you're listening to each one of these fighters yesterday, and they'll say, for example, right, so-and-so, tell us how excited you are for this fight. Before I start, I'd like to say thank you to so-and-so betting company. I'd like to say thank you to my management company, number 4675, blah, 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 blah. And by the time you finish all this shit and they finally start talking, and the issue with that is that we've got so many people around you. When something goes wrong, firstly, the majority are out the door and you never see them again, number one. Number two, if you're looking for advice, who do you generally turn to? And Vladimir Klitschko loses a fight, he'd be straight over to Vitali, and he'd know that he'd give him straight talking, but he'd know he'd comfort him and tell him whether or not he should come back or he should do whatever. With someone like Danieldubois, it'll be his dad, and probably Don Charles, and then his brothers and sisters. That'll be about it. As much as everyone gives Danieldubois shit, he's a good family guy, and he doesn't listen to a lot of the trash talking. He does his best at trying to involve, and he ain't the best of trash talkers. Whereas Anthony Joshua, when he walks in, he needs a fucking Winnebago to transfer half of his people in, never mind the whole lot.
So what we'll do now, Paul, we'll run through the card and we'll pick out your predictions. So Mark Chamberlain to beat Josh Padley, probably by stoppage.
Yeah, I'm going to go 6 rounds on that one.
Boetsi Hutchinson.
I'm going to go under 6 rounds on that one as well.
For Boetsi.
100%.
Kakachi Warrington.
It really depends what version of Warrington. I'm going to give 2 scenarios in this. If Warrington comes in, he's looking sharp, he's looking ripped. After the first round, if he's had a really good first round, I say that he's going to win it and win it on points. But based on recent performances where he seems to have left himself open, and Kakachi looking like a young 35-year-old, and bearing in mind his only loss was against Martin J. Ward, I'm going to go for Kakachi by stoppage, somewhere between rounds 9 to 12.
Tyler Denny, Hamza Shiraz.
Yeah, it's Shiraz all night. I'm going to go 4 rounds on that one. Shiraz.
Liam Smith and Josh Kelly.
What a bloody fight this is potentially going to be. Let me see. I'm going to go Kelly on points. And if I'm wrong with that, then it's going to be Liam Smith on a split decision.
And then the big boys, AJ Dubois.
I'm going Dubois. I'm going to go for Danieldubois. I just think he's a little bit fresher. I think he's got less to lose in this, and I think that even if he loses, he could well end up by fighting a Tyson Fury or whoever's holding a piece of the title in the future. At 26 years old, he's still got many years left in the tank in him. I just think he's a bit fresher than AJ. I think that AJ hasn't fought. You can't compare Francis Ngannou against the likes of Filip Hrgovic. There is no comparison in there. In all honesty, I'd probably say that Jarrell Miller was probably a sterner test than fighting Ngannou. So, and I think that Danieldubois would have done the same that AJ did against Francis Ngannou as well. So, I'm going for Danieldubois, and I'm going to go somewhere between rounds 7 to 10 for the stoppage.
Fantastic, Paul. As always, thank you for your time.
Oh, thanks a lot for having me on, mate. Really looking forward to it, and looking forward to the next pod as well.
Absolutely. Get you back on very, very soon. Cheers, Paul.